what's gonna happen real quick is Jose and I are gonna go first. Okay, are we good to go?
Yep, we're good to go.
Hi everybody, I'm Jessica with BCID.
I'm Jose Hernandez with United Spinal Association.
Thank you for being here today. We're trying something a little bit different. We got panelists here. The wonderful, fabulous people, but they're my like friends, so I'm gassing them up here. But before we get started with that, we're gonna have a couple of housekeeping rules, as usual. Except this one is a little bit different, and I didn't think about that in advance. But we cannot see you, we cannot hear you. So if you have any questions, anybody, just go ahead and put it in the chat. Go for it.
For those who need ASL interpreters, we have Mary here. You can pin her, and you will see her signing for us.
Yep, and I guess without further ado, we have Shain here, Stefan, Yesenia, Yvetta, Josefina, but nobody else can call him that except me, and myself, Jessica. So we're gonna go for it. Go ahead, darling.
So how about we start with Shain? Introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, hello to my fellow panelists. It's great to be here, and good afternoon to everyone that has taken the time to be listening in on this panel. Thank you for your time, and I hope it's going to be beneficial to us. I am a disability advocate. I have worked with independent living centers, and I've worked with various city agencies now for several years. So hopefully we'll all find this interesting.
Yesenia?
Hi everyone, my name is Yesenia. I have been also an activist and advocate for disability awareness and accessibility for our state and locally. I've had the privilege of working with organizations, being a member, volunteering, and now I have a city agency position. And I hope this is gonna help everybody to, ask questions and see how we dealt with getting these positions and what is out there for everyone.
Now, Stefan.
Hello, my name is Stefan Henry. I'm also a disability advocate, statewide and local. Ms. Yesenia Torres actually helped me get into that. I'm a mechanical engineer by day. I do operations and maintenance manuals for the MTA, basically trying to make sure that we have elevators working for our community. And thank you for having me on.
And finally, Yvetta.
Hello, my name is Yvetta Scott. I am a benefits counselor with the Independent Living Center in New York. I am legally blind, and I am also a disability advocate. I've been doing so since my days of Brooklyn College with myself and Yesenia, when we were part of a group called So Fed Up. We were the disability group on campus. And I continue to strive to, level the playing field, especially in the disability community and specifically with the blind and visually impaired. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us.
Hey, really quickly, I've said this in the past, I just wanted to say it again to us panelists. If we can remember, and this is a reminder for myself because I talk too fast, but if we could just kind of keep it at a slower pace so Mary's able to.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
No,
that's fine.
It was a reminder to myself too. Don't worry.
So, do we want to start off with a question?
Absolutely.
So let's start this. When you wanted to go back to work, what were some of your concerns?
Can I please go first since I think I'm the youngest one or newest one of working here?
Yep. Go for it.
Go right ahead.
Just did my first year. Like, I can't believe I've been with BCID for a year, right? And I was scared, completely and utterly terrified. And I'm lucky that I have the great support of Jose, who encouraged me also to do this. Yesenia too. She was just like, I'm moving on to other things when I take my spot, kind of thing. And I was really terrified. I'm not going to say that I wasn't. Even when I went to the Social Security office to report that I was working, Jose was with me, and I cried like an infant in 42nd Street. And he can go ahead and validate that. I was just really terrified. I think I lost face to the question. What was the question again?
What were some of your fears and concerns when you go back to work?
So I was afraid mainly of two things. My home, like I didn't want to be outside of the bracket that wouldn't qualify me for my subsidy. I'm in HUD. So in living in my apartment, like that was, I didn't want to work and then couldn't afford to pay my rent. And then it was like I'm out on the street. And as most of us know, you know, when you have specifically a physical disability that you need a walker or a wheelchair or something like that, we know how very hard it is to find affordable, accessible housing. So that was my huge, huge fear. And then my other fear was the security blanket of Social Security, right? I was like, how am I going to survive without it? Which is why Jose was right there with me as I cried on the middle of 42nd Street, because I was just that scared. And luckily now, a year in, like, I feel better. I feel more secure. He helped teach me because he's been working before me, and gave me that guidance and that support, making sure when I went into the Social Security office, I was armed with all my knowledge, you know, because they can't take that away from you. Once you know something, you know, you just bust it on the table and you shut them all up. So I was armed with that, and when I went into my building management office and to report that I was working, I think getting things in email and writing and all of that is super important, and that's kind of the stuff I did to kind of ease my worries. And a year later, I'm surviving.
Indeed.
So I'm gonna follow up and say she was terrified about the process, and so was I. I graduated college in 2007, and after that I was just so afraid to go back to work. And at the time there was this big fear that if you go back to work you're going to lose your Medicaid, and there was no knowledge out there to tell you, hey, no, you get to keep your Medicaid. And there was a lot of misconception. You had the Medicaid buy-in program, you had this new thing called the 1619B program. Everyone pointed you over to Access VR, or they pointed you to the Red Book, and no one ever really explained the process to you. So I decided to start reading the Red Book, and armed with the knowledge inside that Red Book, I went to the Social Security Administration office, and I was teaching them about their programs. So I am on a program called the 1619B. That's for individuals with disabilities who are on SSI and want to continue to receive their Medicaid while working. You can work and make up to a certain amount. I don't know what the threshold is now into 2020, but I have to report my income monthly, but I am able to work, and I haven't had a problem for a while. For a long time, you know, they didn't get their program together.
Okay, so this is Yvetta. So basically going back to work was extremely scary for me. And I would say, you know, I've been legally blind since I was 11 years old. So when I was working in my early 20s, when I was in college, my vision was a lot better. Now that I have to use a cane and my vision has progressed, my vision loss has progressed, you know, there's different technology needs that I have. And I'm still kind of getting adjusted to these different types of software. So I'm still literally in the learning process when it comes to like JAWS and Zoom text and those kind of software. And I have so many technical issues at my job. And I was also afraid in terms of, you know, what you guys were talking about, the security blanket of SSI. But then I learned about BWIs, you know, the blind work incentives. But I still lost my SSI anyway, because I didn't keep up with taking the receipts. It was just too much. Like all the receipts with even coffee, lunch, it was just too much. I was like, you know what, forget it.
Are you talking about
But-
ERWIs?
No, they
So-
have BWEs too. There's blind work incentives and there's
ERWIs.
impairment related work incentives. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. I mean expensives. I'm sorry, expenses. So, and then housing as well, you know, with Section 8. And then I learned about the earned income disregard, which was amazing, which they don't know about either. You know, HUD doesn't even know about their own program sometimes. NYCHA didn't know about it. Section 8, it was like trying to educate these people on their own program. So it was frustrating.
I think I'm
But-
learning now as we speak. What was that again? I
Oh,
need
the
to
earned income disregard,
the
EID.
earned income disregard.
Yes.
I need to write that down.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
So basically, if you're unemployed for more than 12 months and you're disabled, or you have an increase in your income and you live in HUD housing, for the first 12 months, they will not take your new income into consideration. So my first year of working, they only took my SSI, which was from the previous year, into consideration when they calculated my rent. The second year, they take 50% of your new income. So
Girl,
it was like,
I did it for a year ago.
This is why
you could literally still do it. Like you could still apply. I have the form that I could email you guys, the earned income disregard. Yes, absolutely. I can email it to you. And this is something that I learned from a WIPA program. What is it called? The work incentive something. You know, the WIPA program. I can't remember what it stands for, but I learned it from them. They're the one who told me about it, and they told me about the BWEs, but I had to learn about BWEs because of what I do anyway. But it was a lot. So it's a lot of incentives out there, you know, that help us when we're first re-entering the workforce, because you're kind of skeptical. You're like, oh my God, how long am I going to keep this job? What if I lose it? And so you have some time to hold on to your security blanket while you're still working.
Like I've been working for a few years now, and I still have my security blanket. You know, because
Yeah.
if I was to lose my job tomorrow, I can
Exactly.
contact the Social Security Administration office and say, hey, listen, I lost my job and my case is activated immediately. And I
Right.
live in public housing, so my rent is reduced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. And I think that's one of the number one fears, you know, like losing your money, losing your access to things, and then on top of that, the technology that you may need to actually get into the space, or accessibility of the space itself. Like, you know, going into certain workplaces, you're kind of scared that you're not going to be able to actually do the job. Like, you know, go to the computer, type, write, email people, talk to people, transfer, you know. And there are certain rights you have as an employee that you can enact, that you can just literally go talk to your boss and say, like, I need these things. There's certain programs that help you pay for it. Like, help me get back and help me, something to help me access my emails on the computer. You know, help me get something to help open the door. Like, there are brands out there can help you with that too. So,
Well, those are called reasonable accommodations.
reasonable. That's right. So, yeah, that was one of my number one.
I'm sorry, Stefan, but you just made me think of something else that I was worried about. I don't know what you said that triggered it, but I don't know about anybody else here. But with my disability, sometimes I really am out of commission. There's times where I'm totally fine, and then if I break a bone, you can forget about it. So I think that was another deterrent for me with working. I was afraid of like people being, or my employer being understanding of when I break or my medical condition change. Sorry, Stefan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's literally what I was getting at. So you're on it.
I want to just go back and just make sure that that's what I was gonna go back and make sure that Yesenia and Shane get an opportunity to, you know, talk about their concerns.
So to piggyback on
definitely-
what you were saying, sorry, Shane.
No, definitely go.
Um, my main concern, like out of the ones that you just mentioned, I must add that it was so scary for me to go to a workplace. I've been always hustling on my own from home, from my computer, at my, inconvenience. But going out, transportation wise, how am I going to get there? Taking the bus, taking the train, making sure that excessive, right, is going to leave me. I mean, it was a whole process. It was a journey. It was getting adapted to so many things. And plus, just to the working place, how am I going to get in? I really wanted to do it on my own, and I did it on my own. And thank God, I had support um, from my boss in letting me go to work by myself without an aid. So I learned so much. I put myself to a lot of situations that maybe was uncomfortable for some of my co-workers, but I learned so much. I grew so much. I cried so many days coming back home because it was frustrating in so many ways. But you know what? I mean, you get accustomed. You have to put yourself in those situations to see how to go about. I was working with Stefan. Stefan helped me and to do so many things on my own, showing me because of my disability, it's not like I could grab or open a door or get, water and things like that, right? Heat up my food. But we got to a point that he showed me how to use the microwave on my own. So these little details that if I didn't put myself out there to do them by myself, was I gonna know if I was able to do it? So that was a main concern. I grew and grew and grew and grew everything, it's not easy. It's not easy to put yourself out there, but I did, and it was quite an experience. And that took me to another level. And once going to another level of employment, like with the city, it was also scary because I didn't think I had it to go all the way up there. That was another stage of scariness just to work in that environment. But I did it, and it's possible.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Shane,
Shane.
before you go, Jose, I'm so sorry, y'all. I just remember we were supposed to say something at the beginning.
Well, no one has talked about their employment.
Okay. You sure you don't want to hit that just in case?
If you want to.
Does everybody else agree?
What
David?
happened?
I'm sorry, the reception was a bit off. I didn't quite hear that.
We were just supposed to really
The
quickly
disclaimer.
a disclaimer. I forgot about that. Do you still want to follow through with that?
Please, please.
Go for it, Josefina.
Oh, we just wanted to make a disclaimer that all of our views are our own. We don't reflect our views don't reflect that of our employers. We all work for different organizations and city agencies, and we just want to make that clear that our opinions are our opinions.
Agreed.
So
Okay.
Shane,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, we're not representing, our agencies, but from my end, I just want to concur with a lot of what people have said in terms of the fears that are associated with working and some of the challenges, unique challenges that working presents people with disabilities, specifically with a fear of losing benefits and what that's going to do to your benefits. That's a very real concern. I think if one thing that people with disabilities should learn is that, one, you can work, and two, go to the community, go to independent living centers, go to Access VR, go to these people and these places that with your questions and your concerns. Because I guarantee you, if you have those questions, other people have had those questions too. And as you can see from these panelists, have navigated those hurdles successfully. I think a big thing for me is the importance of learning that you can and should ask for reasonable accommodations in your work environment. A lot of people have fear of, if they have invisible disabilities, of disclosing that they have a disability, of telling people that they have a disability. And unfortunately, that's a very, very valid fear in a lot of ways. But to work successfully, you have the right to request things like technologies, things like a change in your work schedule, or maybe a change in your work environment. Provided that those changes are reasonable, you have every right to ask for those accommodations. So that's number one. And number two, also, remember that yes, as people with disabilities, we have challenges because of how we work, but because we're disabled, there are also things that we can do maybe better than someone who's not disabled. So in some ways, having a disability can be positive in terms of how you relate to maybe other folks with disabilities or other, populations in your environment. So, working can be positive as well. So
So I got an email from actually one of my coworkers that's listening on the panel. The threshold for the 1619B program in New York City, you can make up to $46,316 before it starts affecting your Medicaid. You can offset that with impairment-related work expenses, and let's say you get a job and make $60,000. You can still retain your Medicaid by going into the Medicaid buy-in program. And I just wanted to state, in New Jersey, the threshold is $35,520. So it's different in every state.
Mm-hmm.
Could I add something? Because I went over the range, and still I think it goes to 90,000.
That's for the Medicaid.
No, that's before you Medicaid pay-in.
Well, no,
Right?
yeah, the Medicaid buy-in.
Buy-in.
The 1619B program, they'll do an individualized assessment, and depending on your level of care and how much you need your Medicaid, that threshold can change.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So for someone, let's use Shane, for example, who doesn't need home care services and doesn't require Medicaid. Do you get Medicaid?
not currently, no.
So he doesn't require the Medicaid services. So for someone like Shane, the 1619B program will probably be a hindrance and hold you back because you would be held to $46,000 per year. And you can't get an individualized assessment because you're not a high needs individual, so your Medicaid needs won't match up. So
And let me just jump in there as well. That's why it's really important. And every state has these to go to. The cities have these. Go to independent living centers and say, look, these are my concerns, because you can speak with a professional about your finances, about your housing situation, about that you want to work, but you have these concerns that you need to address, and you'll have experts that will sit down with you and figure out a way that you can still retain your benefits and get the help that you need, but also work. So absolutely, you shouldn't feel like you need to go it alone, because that's absolutely not what we're advocating at all.
Mhm.
I'm want to touch a little bit on people who have SSDI. It's not the same rules and regulations as a person that has SSI and has never worked or made any income. So you have trial work periods and different regulations for that. I don't know 100% of them, but they're in the Red Book. And even if you have SSI or SSDI, there's definitely ways that you can go back to work. If anyone that is attending has any knowledge on that, please put in the comment and I'll share that with the people here, because I'm pretty
I'm sure people
David.
know, but you could just explain for the people listening what the Red Book means. That'd be great.
Oh, so the Red Book is the Social Security Administration's guidebook. They put their regulations in there about returning back to work. So it's basically their guide for you to return back to work. So they have different programs like the 1619B, the trial work periods, the extended work periods, the thresholds are in there. I'm not sure if the Medicaid buy-in program is in there, but if
No.
you, no, it's not, no.
Mm-mm.
It's kind of like preparing for your test at the DMV. You just get that little booklet. You know, and you arm yourself. I'm telling you
Yeah.
that all Jose for me anyway really helped me and encouraged me. You know,
I read that book back and forth, highlighted sections, printed them, made double copies, went to the Social Security Administration, handed them a highlighted copy, sat in front of
Yes.
them, was like, okay,
Yep.
this is where I fall in. I was teaching them about their own book.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I also
Yep.
want to add that when you're going to Social Security, whether you're reporting IRWIs or whatever the case may be, I think, and in other friends' experiences, I think that making sure you get something stamped with their
Absolutely.
Social
Absolutely.
Security thing, it has the date, because they'll say you weren't there, but then you're like, oh, but look, I got a pretty little stamp, and then you can't dispute that. I love having everything like official and
Jessica, that's a great point. Yeah, you have to do that. You have to do that.
Mhm.
I get it notarized every time I go.
And
no,
keep,
it's true.
and
Notarized.
keep copies of whatever you send them because you're dealing with a bureaucracy. So
Mm-hmm.
just keep copies of everything.
And it's a pain in the tush, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's absolutely worth it. Jose thinks I'm ridiculous because I hold on to every piece of paper sometimes. But if I have to be like, bam, you know, I told you.
Well, I have to report my income monthly,
Yeah, me
and I get a receipt every month, and I have 5 years worth of receipts sitting around.
Wow.
So yes,
too.
keep everything.
Yeah.
Guys, I
Oh,
think
another. Oh, go
topic
ahead.
that I've seen, I'm sorry, that people are asking is on transportation, like how to get to the workplace. So
I
We'll
can,
touch on
Oh.
that.
I'll jump.
Hold on. I think
I just wanted to say one more thing before we went on to transportation about Social Security.
Yep.
So just be mindful that if you receive SSI, and you go to report your income and it's too high or whatever, you can get slapped with a overpayment letter shortly thereafter reporting your income. So if possible, the last 2 checks that you get from Social Security, don't spend it. Just don't spend it. So once you get slapped with that overpayment, you can be like, here's your money back. Or you can also work out a repayment issue. And I learned that the hard way. So you can work out a repayment plan with them as well.
And I
Yeah.
will tell you, sometimes people, and I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds here, but I know some people in my experience who's just like, oh, well, that's their problem. Let them find out and I'll deal with it then. I am going to tell you that I've seen all of these people with that mentality get slapped right in
Yep.
the
Mm-hmm.
and it's not worth it in the end. So I am going to hop on Yvetta's bus and tell you guys, like she said, if you can do it, put it away and save it. So when that first thing notice comes in, you just pay it off and you're done. Why end up owing these people 20 grand? Then all you're doing is working to pay them back? No.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
it actually happened to me, guys, and I fought it for the first time. I fought it. Remember that I told you? I fought for that, and they dismissed it. I don't know what happened. I was blessed. The angels were with me. They did not charge me.
Yeah, that doesn't work out all the time because
No.
I
It
ended
sure
up
doesn't.
But the second time they did.
'Cause
I
they-
had an overpayment. It was about $1,000, and I left them their money in their account because it goes automatically direct deposited. So I went into the office and handed them a check.
Yep. Same thing.
just
Mm-hmm.
to further hop on Yvetta's bus, this could fuck with your credit. So if you're thinking you're getting away with getting Social Security money, and then you have a whole bunch of money in debt, it's gonna screw with your credit. It's gonna screw with your ability to buy anything in the future. You're always remember your taxes are always going to be terrible every year.
Well, I'm gonna say this.
100%.
I'm gonna say this, and then we're gonna move on to the transportation. This is a federal debt. It's just like the IRS. This is
Yep.
never going to go away no matter what you think. Like you can file for bankruptcy and that will still be on your credit. Just like Jessica said, Jessica Campbell, one of the attendees, she said that, you know, it happened to her and you just can't get away from it.
And it's not worth it in the end. Put it in your pocket. Why give it back to these morons?
Yep. So,
Transportation.
let's move on to transportation. How does people get around? How do you get to work?
I want to go first again.
Go for it.
Stefan and Yesenia, took the cubicle before me. So I like to say that cubicle is destined for greatness. So it would soon pass on the torch to me. But with that being said, I take the train. And with that being said, I wish all the trains were accessible. But because with how, you guys know it is at BCIT, you go to a lot of meetings and appointments and things in between. Luckily, Mighty, he's very understanding. He knows the subways and lack of elevators. My preferred method is the subway. I love the subway. It's fast. It's very New Yorkish. And, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but, as soon as you get on the subway, you get that New York mentality where you don't see nobody, hear nobody, you just on the train, that's just the New York way. But that's my preferred way. And when it works, it's great. I also am super blessed to be on Curb, thank God.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
And that's where I'm gonna piggyback on because Curb is a godsend. And that's why we're constantly fighting for them to extend it. And I get on people who abuse it because it's really, because when I first started working, I was using regular Accessoride. I don't like the subway. Like, that's just my own personal, I don't really feel safe on the train. Maybe once I get a guide dog, I'll feel a little more safe, but I just don't trust the subway. That's just my personal thing. But so I was taking Accessoride. I was late for meetings. I was late for this, late for that. But thank God, again, I work out of independent living. So HR was like, listen, we know, we take Accessoride, so we understand, it's fine. But Curb has been a godsend. Like, it really has been. I was able to get to meetings on time, get to work on time, wasn't missing meetings. And, so that, I just hope it continues, Curb, without rationing the rides.
Well, I'm going to say that, hopefully through advocacy and maybe changes in some kind of miracle, they extend the Curb program to more participants, or even have same-day services through the paratransit, and regulate that, because I seen in other states that VIA is actually running the paratransit services, and
Oh, wow.
they're
Yeah.
doing same-day services and running it more like a cab instead of the paratransit services here that are completely not practical in the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, Shane, how do you get around?
Yeah. So yeah, I would just to piggyback on that, I would agree that the paratransit services are highly problematic. I use everything. I use Accessoride. I use the buses. I use the subway. And occasionally I use cabs, but they're really expensive. So never. But yeah, and I need all that. I need to use the subway because Accessoride, you can be late to things. They just not pick you up. Or you're waiting for hours, or it can be right on time. So, I use Stressoride, and they call it Stressoride for a reason, because you're gonna be super stressed. And I don't know if people outside New York or will be listening to this podcast. Definitely different cities have different standards. But paratransit is a federal mandate. That said, depending on where you go, it can be a radically different experience for each city. But yeah, I use and depend on absolutely everything.
And I'm gonna say something that Jessica, she uses the subway, but what she failed to tell you is that she needs to roll how many blocks? 10, almost a mile.
13 blocks from my home to the nearest.
It's about a mile. It's definitely about a mile. 14, 15 blocks.
Which is not fun in the cold.
It's not fun in the
Of course
cold.
not.
I could take a bus, but by the time the bus came, tied me down, and got me there, I grew a crop already. So
Power chair life, basically.
Yeah, power chairs.
Like,
That's not available to everyone. Me, I'm one of the spoiled ones. I did do the subway. I did this, buses. I did paratransit. My preferred method back in the day was the subway. You know, I have two stations within a mile of me that are accessible, and there are the two main lines used in the city. You know, I could take the 2-5 train or the 4 train, and I can pretty much get anywhere in the city with those two lines in Manhattan anyway. Then a few years later, I got, you know, fortunate and I started driving.
Oh, lucky.
So I drive everywhere. I wanted
I'm waiting for
to.
that driverless car. Then I can drive too.
Oh my God. Love that. Love that. Can't wait.
It'll come. It'll come. I wanted to touch on something that Teresa Brzezinski says. She says, how do the panelists approach the initial request for reasonable accommodations on the job? What tips would you offer the folks who may be nervous about asking for those accommodations?
You don't need to be nervous about anything. It's your right.
Mhm.
Don't be nervous about anything. I think that's something that, you know, it goes back to, here we go answering the question again first. I'm sorry, y'all.
No, go for it.
But I think it's like you have to, once you're armed with your knowledge of what your rights are, you just go with it. I mean, of course,
Mhm.
you're not just gonna be in there, oh my God, give me this because I need this. That's not how it works either, right?
Mhm.
But like for me in particular, I overheat very easily because of my disability. So I remember the first day I was in the office, I was like, I'm gonna die in here today because it's just so hot for me. So I requested a fan and I explained, and it's the truth. Why would I make it something so stupid? I could buy me a $10 fan, but
Mhm.
it was more of, this is a very warm environment for me. I overheat very easily. You know, this is what I would need to overcome that hump, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go even further with that, and you know, we have Access VR. Well, a lot of us went through Access VR, and we go through like a training, and they
Yeah.
let us know what devices work for us. Like I did the Access VR thing 20 years ago, and I started using Dragon. Naturally speaking, I need a trackball mouse to use my computer, and I need a height adjustable table. So initially, when I go into work, I know I need these things to be able to work in an office environment. So it
Mhm.
could be something as simple as raising the table up 3 inches and
Mhm.
providing me with the voice dictation program, a headset to use that voice dictation program with, and a trackball mouse. So usually these accommodations amount to um, this accommodations usually amount to a little less than $500, where companies can get tax write-offs and stuff like that for that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I just want to
absolutely.
say, someone asked what is VR. So Access VR is vocational services. Um, so they offer training. Um, uh,
Tuition payments.
what is it?
Tuition payments if you're going to school.
Tuition, transportation. They do assessments on what you can and cannot do. Now
And
that
I
you
think
know,
the link to Access VR is in the description, I think, as well.
um,
Or
the
is
I haven't put it in. I'll put it in now.
okay.
I want to add something, guys. I got a certification as an ADA coordinator, and it's you learn
Mm.
about the titles, right? The American with Disability Act, the titles, Titles 1, Titles 2. And if you go into this and you like knowing your rights, it's always going to be easy to approach your workplace, to
Mhm.
approach anything that you should need on accommodations because you know what your rights are. So I
Mhm.
everybody to go into these titles and get familiarized with them and learn how to use them in your everyday life.
Yeah,
I actually
absolutely. I'll just
Absolutely.
that
as well.
It's
Um,
sometimes it's actually a bit easier to just go to your HR department, which normally has some idea of what accessibility rights are supposed to be enacted by any like state or government agency that you're part of. Um, there's normally a disabilities advocate center in any department that you work for, assuming that you're not working for an ILC. And when when you're there, you can give them your documentation saying that you have this sort of disability, this is the sort of thing you need, and they'll help you negotiate with your bosses, with upper management. And if you have a nice boss, you can just go tell your boss as well, like, hey, these are things that I need. And normally those two will work together to actually help you get the equipment and services that you're asking for.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the important thing to remember, guys, is that this is going to be a conversation with you and whoever your employer is about the systems that you need. It could be that you'd be like, I need this specific thing, and they could just get it for you. Or typically, again, it's about what's reasonable. So it's about what do you need the system to do for you, and you may want piece of equipment A, but you may have a conversation with your employer, and if their suggestion for a piece of equipment B does the job just as well, you can get B. So it's a conversation between you and your employer that you are, of
Mhm.
course, legally, allowed to have, and you shouldn't feel nervous at all going to an employer and asking for those things.
And we
I
all
have,
have a really good, most of us here, we have a really great upper hand in the fact that we work with independent living center at some point or another, where they work, or like United Spinal, where they have a really good gauge of disability needs, and that has been a huge benefit. So it's been a real good stepping stone for me for my first like real job, being something like this, and it makes me more comfortable with having to have those conversations, because I know that my boss, Joe, he has an understanding of what happens, in the community. So I'm
And
really
just to give a peace of mind to people, Stefan and I are within city agency, and believe me, they know that they
Mhm.
comply with the ADA. So it has not been difficult to get, like, I didn't even have to. They're like, what's your accommodation?
what do you need?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one
And
of
not
the
everyone
things
is going
that
to
you
have,
might. Oh.
I was going to say that not everyone's going to have that, that luxury of working for independent living centers or for United Spinal. So,
Yeah.
you're going to have to ask, and just don't be afraid.
Yeah. Can I
So one of the things that I
one-
ran into. Sorry, Stefan.
One
Sorry.
second, one second. For the elevator and escalator people who are curious about like whether elevators are working or escalators are working, there's a part of the MTA that's called ELES, which is elevator and escalator status. So when I get up in the morning and I want to make sure that I can take this train to said location, I check the status first. If I can't do that, then I reroute. And even on the MTA website, they'll actually help you reroute which trains and buses you can take to get to wherever you're going. And I just wanted to put that in there. I dropped the link in there too. I'm sorry, continue. Bye-bye.
Okay. No, it's fine. So I just wanted to say that, working somewhere that has a lot of people with disabilities is great, where most of the workforce has disabilities, but sometimes you can get caught in that rut where they, you may run into the higher ups trying to say things to you like, well, if this works for that person, why wouldn't it work for you? So I've had to say a couple of times, every blind person doesn't use the same technology. We're not all comfortable with the same type of technology. So make sure that what you're comfortable with, what works best for you, and you can do that by going through Access VR and getting those assessments, or Commission for the Blind and getting those assessments. And even going back on, when you were in school, what accommodations did you have when you were in college? And what maybe some of those would work for you. So it's just make sure that it's individualized, and don't allow anyone to throw things at you that would not work for you.
We
One
have,
other thing, sorry, just a little bit. Somebody asked me a question. If you're employed, can you still go through Access VR? Yes.
Yep.
So if you're employed, you could still get, services from them.
So we have a hypothetical question. Does anyone want to speculate on why, hold on, speculate on why all of these rules are in place and how they keep people from working? So like in general, all the rules that we have to, all the hoops that we have to jump through to even go back to work? Why are they in place, and how do they keep us from working?
I would say a lack of education on the part of that. One of the biggest things I would think is a lack of education on the part of employers. So I know specifically, like, you know, the unemployment rate in the blind community is like upwards of 60%. And because we live in a visual world, you know, most people look at you, they say, hey, how do you even cross the street? You know, like, how do you use a computer? How are you going to do this job? You can't see. So I know from experience that a big part of it is lack of education on the part of employers, which is why it's so important for employers to have some type of diversity coordinator in place or join with certain groups to become more educated on, you know, people with disabilities.
Yeah, no, I agree, and there's just a lot to it. You know, the rules are. I'm not going to say that they were meant to keep us from working, but
Mm-hmm.
they just weren't set up the way they are now. Now, you know, we have been it's progressed. We've progressed to a point where the government wants us to go back to work and contribute to the taxes and stuff like that. So that's why they give you the Medicaid buy-in. That's why they give you the 1619B. That's why they set thresholds. Um, they make the red book. They didn't have to do that, and they have the program. What it said, earned income. The one that you said,
Yes, earned income disregard.
earned
Yes.
income disregard. You know,
Mm-hmm.
these are to incentivize individuals with disabilities to go back to work. So
Now you can, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here or whatever you want to call it, but I can also, like, first when Yvetta started speaking, I was like, yes, it is a lack of knowledge, and I understand that. And I'm up until yesterday still learning things as a human. I evolve every day, right? But in the same breath, I feel like we are, people know. Like, I have had people, one time I went into a restaurant, and this is completely different, I know, but one time I went into a restaurant and they were blocking the accessible entrance, which was in the back by the garbage. Okay, that's
Oh my
number
God.
one. And problem number two was, she said to me, because I was like, wait a minute, I don't understand. I want to come in and place my order. She was like, you people, all you want to do is go around and sue people, right? So they already have the knowledge of people with disabilities and needs, and I think they're more, yes, there is a lack of knowledge there 100%, but I think of a lot of it is liability, right? A lot of them don't want to
Yes,
take
that's
that
true.
risk because of liability, you know. Yes, I am disabled.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And willful ignorance, and, you know, like, well, I refuse to learn about it because she's gonna fall anyway, or she's gonna do something and she's gonna sue, you know, get hurt or sue, you know. So I totally agree.
Yeah, it's definitely a little, and then like Jose, I hear what you're saying, you know, about putting all these incentives in to get us to work, but then once you look into, and this isn't to discourage anybody, again, it all comes back to what you take in knowledge of yourself and go and armed with these words, weapons.
absolutely.
You know? But
I'm going to say,
wait a minute, I didn't finish my thought. Is that, you know, you go in knowledge, armed with all this knowledge, right? So that way you can educate them about their own stuff, but at the same time, they kind of block you at every road. You know, there's a risk for one thing and another thing and another thing, you know? So it's kind of like, you get stuck. You know, it is evolving and it is getting better, but there's a lot of oppression in trying to keep us down in a lot of ways too. And like, my last piece is like Jose and I, obviously, if you can't tell by now, we're in a relationship, but like even getting married isn't even an option because of our benefits, right? At every corner, there's a way of trying to knock people with disabilities down and stop them. But with all the advocacy that all of us here do, and all of us here who are working and everybody watching, trying to learn how to get the knowledge to work, will eventually knock all those barriers down.
well,
I think it's a different era as well. I mean, a lot of the laws were.
Real quick.
I'm
I
sorry.
think it's a problem of old rules and new systems and new mentalities, right? So
I agree.
it's just like people were very scared at one point that people with disabilities were going to rob and scam the system by trying to get like, all these benefits out. So they made ridiculous rules that make it like so hard for you to go to work. And you have to find these little pathways to kind of like fight people and eventually get everything that you need. I don't think it's actively malicious anymore. I think it's just an old system just throwing itself out there, and a lot of people with an old mentality that still think that people with disabilities are either weak or not going to truly work for what they need. And it's up to us to really get out there and go to work and show them and be out there and just be like, hey, listen, I'm here. I have a life. I have a family I want to build. I have things I want to do. And I'm not trying to rob the system. And even if I was, how dare you assume that but you know.
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna agree. It's an antiquated system, and like government moves like molasses, and they just need to catch up. Even people who work could only have $2,000 in the bank, like if you're still on SSI. But there's legislation trying to change that. We have the ABLE accounts. We have ABLE accounts, which allow you to save money. You have trust. So things are changing and rules are being made to accommodate us. But in the interest of time, I want to touch on a few things. Shane, did you have something to say?
Well, just to concur. I mean, Stefan. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, but that's why we're fighting to do what we do, because I think there were old ideas of people with disabilities. Back in the day, just a generation or two ago, we would have been in institutions. So the very idea that we can work and should work, the old guard, a lot of whom are still in power, sort of see that as that's an idea they can't wrap their head around. So it's just a lot of it is a question of again, old ideas, and we need to do what we can do to challenge those ideas, but we do that by working and doing the best job that we can, and eventually those ideas will change. But for the meantime, yeah, the fight continues for sure.
Yep. I was gonna say that Catherine Carroll, she has a great advice. It's like asking for accommodation can be terrifying, but considering what happens if you don't get the support you need, you want to demonstrate your amazing skill and be the best employee that you can. And without those accommodations, you can't do that.
Sure. And let me jump in as well. That's a great point, a great question that was just asked. You have to ask for those accommodations first, because you can't be struggling at work and then they're gonna say, unfortunately, let you go, and then you say, wait, I have a disability. That's not the way it works. They have to know you have a disability first for you to get the protections of a reasonable accommodation. So.
And you talk about this once you're hired. Remember, very important. Once you're hired,
Right.
An excuse for not giving you the job because you have a disability. So after you get hired, and you start negotiating. If you have an HR EEO department in the place of work, excellent, go to them. And if not, remember guys, if we know what our rights are, it's easier to bring it up to them and say that, this is what we need. This is our rights.
So there's another question. Is there any jobs hiring right now?
A ton. I mean,
there's a lot of programs like NYC at Work, that helps you connect employers that are looking to hire with employees.
Really? I never heard of that. NYC at Work? Okay.
Yep. I was gonna actually shout out someone from the program. Tara Aceto was here, but she has logged off. But look it up, NYC at Work.
Nice.
The mayor's office for people with disabilities, actually, yeah.
Yep, it's a program for the mayor's office for people with disabilities.
Tara said Eli Ramos, they're normally working with people to build their resumes as well. Job skills, things of that nature. So if you contact them, Eli Ramos at MLPD.org, I believe.
Workforce One as well.
I'm sorry, guys. We're gonna put in our finishing thoughts because I know people have to go, and so does Mary. But with that being said, real quick, Robert, no, your interviewer is not allowed to ask you if you have a disability.
No.
That's against the law.
Right.
Absolutely
But
not.
anyway, do we all have like final thoughts in what we want to share before we log off? I mean, I think the thing we've all had in common, the thing that stands out to me is, you know, doing your research and getting your knowledge and going armed, you know, with what we know. I can see that from us. So anybody else has something?
I'll jump in. You know, I mean, just anybody with a disability that's listening, any young person with a disability, you know, if you think you can work, go for it, because you can. You know, definitely there, you know, yes, there's something you can't do, but you know, everybody has something that they can't do. Whether you're disabled or you know, or not, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and so do we. So I guarantee you, if you work, you have a strength that you would bring to an employment environment. So absolutely go ahead and do it. And there are resources out there for you. Definitely feel free to reach out to us for sure if you have questions or concerns, absolutely. But definitely if you want to work, go for it.
Absolutely. I just want to concur. I believe that, you know, if you put your mind to it and you arm yourself with knowledge, you can definitely get the job done. Don't let anybody stop you. You know, be your own motivation. You know, just look at yourself in the mirror every day and say, you know what, I can do it. I can do it. And write down some goals that you want to achieve within the next 5 years. Try to stick to them. Mini goals as well. And I'm here. I have my, you know, my email. If anyone has questions regarding, you know, assistance or anything of that nature, like with benefits counseling specifically, that's something that I do. I'm a benefits counselor for New York Connects. So, you know, that's one thing you can reach out to us and we can help you understand.
Tell us all your email. Go for it. This is your second to shine. I mean, well, you know, go.
Yeah.
What's your email?
My email address for my job is Scott, SCOTT, at Sydney.org. So that's CIDNY.org. And if you have any questions regarding, you know, job placement or benefits counseling in general, that's what we're here for.
Stefan threw that in the chat. Thank you.
Yep, he put it in the chat. I'm gonna say as well, Jessica, can you put our emails in there?
Yeah, man.
There's a lot of resources out there. You know, you have the Empowerment NYC. If you feel that you're not ready to go work, you know, Jessica Campbell brought up a good point that the volunteering is a good way to get your feet wet into that. You have
Excuse me, not only feet, get your wheels wet too. Thanks.
Get your wheels wet. That's politically correct.
And then I have a lot of track marks in my apartment because of that shit. But
Oh, hold on. Somebody said they can't see the chat. So Marisol, that was Y for yellow, SCOTT at Sydney.org, right? Yes, right.
Yeah, you should just go to, on the screen, just click more when you click the screen.
Access
No.
to it. Maybe she's just on like the physical phone.
Okay.
Well, she
And
typed the question in.
oh yeah. Well, whatever. And blah, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, I'm Jessica DeLaRosa, J DeLaRosa, DeLaRosa at bcid.org.
There's a chat feature. So if you could put our emails in the chat.
I did. I'm just saying that in case people don't have it. Anybody else? My lovely panelists?
Yeah.
You didn't put it in the regular chat, Jessica.
Yeah, just put it in the chat, and I think that might be better than everybody just saying.
You have to put it all panelists.
And people can
Sorry.
Yeah.
All good. My one thing that I tell everybody is be annoying, be incredibly annoying, ask questions in the world. Don't be scared. Reach out to us, reach out to your independent living centers, find out where your independent living centers are. Like, nobody knows what they want until they have it. So you may be like the next best employee for someone. They have no idea until you advocate for yourself and you get in there. So be annoying.
I mean, also, the federal government is actively recruiting for people with disabilities.
Right.
So absolutely, that's an avenue that you can go down as well, for sure.
Oh yeah, Schedule A and Schedule B. You guys should look into that.
Guys, I would like to tell everybody to try it. It's possible. We're all here living proof. It has its obstacle courses, but we know how to go around it, and we're here for you. Volunteer, educate yourself, know your rights. Very important, because when you know your rights, you're gonna fight the right fight, and there's nothing that's gonna stop you once you know that. So go for it, and we're here. Everybody's here to help out and guide you through it and make it at least as smooth as possible.
Right.
All right.
All right.
With that,
Thank
Like
you
to
guys,
say-
and thank you, Mary. Thank you, panelists.
thank
Thank you,
Mary.
everyone.
Please work. Oh, I sound like Rihanna. Work. Anyway, we can do it. I mean, we're all proof here. It can be done. Try it in the very least. I'm glad I did, and I had wonderful people to encourage me to do so.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Be well,
Thank you so much,
everybody.
everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care. Good
Later.
seeing you again. All right.
Yep,
Bye.
good seeing you. Bye.
Bye-bye.